B'Shem Kol Yisrael. So we're going to be learning the laws of Chuppah and Kiddushin to protect all of Am Yisrael, starting with Siman Chaf Vav. Our first topic is how exactly are we to Makadesh a woman, and can we do Kiddushin through Bia, through intercourse? So what exactly is the goal of Kiddushin? The Shulchan Aruch writes that being Makadesh a woman has two halachik effects. First of all, a woman who's mikudeshet is now chayev misa if she were to be with another man, to have intercourse with another man, and he would also be chayev misa. And second of all, she now requires a get in order to separate. So even though she's not yet married, that would be the second stage of the process of nisuin, so she can't be with her husband, still, that is the halachic effect of Kiddushin. Now, how exactly do we Makadesh a woman? The Gemara in Kiddushin, the first Mishnah paskins, that we Makadesh a woman in three ways. Kesef, through money, or something of monetary worth. Shtar, a contract of sorts. And Bia, or intercourse. That's the three ways in which it would work biblically. Practically speaking, we Makadesh a woman through something worth money, generally through a ring. Now, does that mean we can just go and have relations with a woman for the sake of marriage? And if there were witnesses that knew about it, would that count nowadays? So the Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Yud Bet Amud Bet relates of a story of how Rav was Malke. He smote someone in the marketplace who Makadeshed a woman with a myrtle. And there's a lot of discussion about exactly what were the circumstances in which Rav smote them. But practically speaking, the Rambam Paskin is based on this, that anyone who's Makadesh a woman through Bia nowadays, or in the marketplace, i.e., like as if it's just, you're buying the woman, or without Shidduchin, meaning to say you just met on the spot, you didn't meet beforehand, we give this man Malchus. We whip the man. So even though it counts technically, it's not appropriate. The Rush is a bit more lenient, and he says that we only give Malchus if it was Bia and no Shidduchim. But we are not going to start giving someone Malchus, if he just does Shidduchin, meets a girl and engages her. But for Bia, which we think is inappropriate, in the olden days, the Rambam writes, people would just have Bia with a woman on the street, meet a girl and then just right away get married to her. And the Torah is trying to make a more of a ceremony of it to sanctify this marriage with the community and with Hashem involved. And so for Bia, even though it technically would work if everything was done properly, we'll see it's complicated to make it done properly, but it's inappropriate, and so you get Malchus. Lamaisa, the Shulchan Aruch writes in Chaf Vav Dalid, like the Rambam, who we often paskins like, he generally paskins like the Rambam, Kiddushin through Bia counts, but we would give a person Malchus if we had a court to do it. Shulchan Aruch even writes if it was in a shuk or without Shidduchin, it would also get Malchus. The Ramah paskins like the Rush, who says we only give Malchus if someone had Bia without Shidduchim. The Pischei Shuva writes, based on the Shulchan Aruch, that we would only give the Malchus to the man who is Makadesh the woman in this way with the Bia, not the woman. Halacha Maisa, no Makadeshing a woman through Bia nowadays, even though it would technically work on a biblical sense. Topic 2 of today's exciting learning. Can a man and woman have relations and have in mind for marriage, I'm going to take a woman, I'm going to have in mind this is for the sake of issues, of an intimate one-on-one relationship, and would that count for marriage nowadays? So the Rambam, the Tur, and the Shulchan Aruch in Chav Zayin Aleph writes, no. Certainly if you just had relations with a woman, derech snus, not for marriage, but just for relations, just for pleasure, that would not count for marriage. But even if you did it for the sake of issues or an intimate relationship, it would not count. Okay? However, the Beis Shmuel, commentator on Ebenezer, says that if everyone knows that they're together for the sake of issues, for the sake of a one-on-one, perhaps marriage, perhaps just one-on-one relationship, it's like there are witnesses, and it would count. And so if everyone knows that, therefore they would need a get in order to get a divorce if everyone knew that they were having relations for the sake of an intimate relationship. And we'll take that opinion into account when we get to the topic of civil marriages and if it counts. Topic number 3. Can you mekadesh a girl through a chuppah? So, as you mentioned, the Gemara gave 3 options. Kesef, shtar, and bia, which excludes, says the Gemara, the option of chuppah. However, Rav Huna disagrees. He says that since chuppah counts for some matters relating to Yerusha and Chalitza, it would count to mekadesh a girl through standing under her with a chuppah. It's unclear how we paskin in this machlokes in the Gemara. Halachah l'maisa, most poskim rule chuppah does not count for Kiddushin. The Shulchan Aruch writes, "Im yechnes isha lechuppah, eina mitkadeshet bakach." She is not sanctified. V'yesh omrim she'is safek, but some say it's a doubt, and some say it does count. In other words, really doesn't work, but some are machmir. The Shar HaMelech, which is brought down by the Pesach Yeshuvah, rules more stringently. He says maybe she's a suffix mikudeshet. Maybe we're concerned that Rav Huna is right. However, the Dagul Mirvava, another Achron, writes that we can be lenient in the case of an almana. So even though the Shar HaMelech is even machmir there by an almana who is under the chuppah, the Dagul Mirvava would not require a get out of Safek, but the Shar HaMelech would if he stood under the chuppah with an almana. The Pidchei Tshuva brings down that if the girl is a nida, and it's logical that we don't have to be stringent for Rav Huna's opinion, since some say that a chuppah must be one where a bia is possible, and since bia wouldn't be possible since she was a nida, if you stood under the chuppah of someone who was a nida, you wouldn't need a get out of Safek. So practically speaking, there's a condition through chuppah. Some, like the Shar HaMelech, will be machmir to require a get. But we have more room for leniency if it's a widow or if it's someone who is a nida at the time of the wedding, of the chuppah. Definitely better not to get oneself into this situation. I would advise against it. Okay, now we have a really fascinating topic. The topic of, can I have a pilegesh nowadays? Is that an option? So, what is a pilegesh? So, in Shmuel Bet, Parakeh, we learned that David HaMelech took a pilegesh. Pilegesh seems to be a woman who's in a relationship with a man but not married. And it's really unclear exactly what is a pilegesh. So we're going to see 3 different perspectives on what is a pilegesh and is it an option today. Perspective number 1, shita number 1. A pilegesh is a woman who is taken without kiddushin, without a ketubah, no formalities. She's just taken to be for the king. It's only for the king. A regular person cannot use this leniency. David HaMelech could do it, but not a regular person. This is the Kesef Mishnah, Yosef Karo's explanation of the Rambam. There's a second understanding of the Rambam's opinion based on the Magid Mishnah. He feels that a pilegesh actually has a kiddushin. You're actually mekadesh pilagshim, but no ketubah. So there's some formalities, but not all formalities. And actually, anyone can make use of this option, not just a king. The third perspective of the Ramban and the Ravid is that there is no formalities, no kiddushin, no ketubah. This is probably, I think, maybe the most intuitive reading of what a pilegesh means. But the man who took her was miyached her for a relationship. And anyone can do this, not just a king, because it's not derech snus, it's derech ishus. This, I would say, is the most surprising of the opinions. Some Rishonim actually agree with the third perspective, but say lamaisa, we shouldn't take one. No pilagshim, because we're concerned that she won't be careful about going to the mikvah. The Rosh writes in this derech that there was actually a real situation where someone took a pilegesh, and the Rosh said we should force this man to remove this pilegesh because it's likely that she will not go to the mikvah. She'll be too embarrassed, and they won't be careful about the laws of mikvah, and then he'll be sleeping with the nida. So, how do we paskin halacha l'maisa? Some of you might be disappointed to note the Shulchan Aruch rules that if a man took a woman into her home for a relationship, we force him to take her out of the house, just like the rush, just like the Torah brought down. So even if we paskin like the third opinion, we don't practically allow it. Kofino to lo tzioto. The Ramah does quote the lenient opinion of the Ravid that if she goes to the mikvah, we can consider her a pelegesh. And some say that we whip him, as this is a kadesha that the Torah talks about. So some would actually say it's an isser raita. That's a kadesha, that's a prostitute, a premarital relation. But he does mention that there's a lenient opinion. Practically speaking, the Rivash famously writes that nowadays we do not allow women to go to the mikvah before marriage. He was a 13th century Rav, and we are concerned for intermarital relations, which, as we just mentioned, might be an Isser D'Oraisa, might be an Isser D'Rabbanan, definitely an Isser, and to discourage it, we won't allow women to go to the mikvah before marriage, so they won't think it's okay to be with their husbands. So Allah Maisa, it's not an option to simply take a pilegesh, although it's fascinating to learn the lumdis of it. Nonetheless, people want to make use of this and say, oh, just take a pilegesh for myself. I won't have to go through all the formalities of marriage, but practically speaking, it is not a good halachik option to do that. Okay, I think we'll stop here. We will continue part 2 of Inyane Chuppah and Kiddushin for the sake of the whole Jewish people. I hope this was interesting, enjoyable for you and for all of Am Yisrael, and a great chazara for those who are studying for the Chuppah and Kiddushin test to be Masada Keddushins. Have a beautiful day. A Chag Sameach.